Discipline is not what you think it is. Most people believe discipline is about forcing yourself to do things you hate, grinding through misery, and suppressing your desires through sheer willpower. They think disciplined people are just naturally tough or have some genetic advantage that makes suffering easier. This is completely wrong, and this misunderstanding is why most people never develop real discipline. Let me tell you what discipline actually is. Discipline is the ability to choose long-term satisfaction over short-term pleasure. It is the skill of aligning your actions with your goals, regardless of how you feel in the moment. It is the capacity to do what needs to be done when it needs to be done, whether you want to or not. This is not about suffering. This is not about self-punishment. This is about freedom. Real discipline gives you freedom to create the life you want instead of being controlled by impulses and immediate gratification. The people you admire, the ones who accomplish extraordinary things, who build successful businesses, who maintain incredible fitness, who master difficult skills, they all have one thing in common. They have developed discipline to a level that most people cannot comprehend. And here is what nobody tells you. They are not suffering. They are not miserable. They are not forcing themselves through constant agony. They have learned to make discipline feel natural, even enjoyable. They have built systems that make the right choices easy and the wrong choices hard. They have transformed their relationship with discomfort so it no longer controls their decisions. You can do the same thing. By the time you finish this audiobook, you will understand exactly how discipline works, why willpower alone always fails, and how to build unbreakable self-control that becomes automatic rather than effortful. You will learn the neuroscience of impulse control, the psychology of delayed gratification, and the practical systems that elite performers use to maintain discipline in every area of their lives. This is not motivational fluff. This is not rah-rah inspiration that fades in 48 hours. This is a systematic approach to building discipline based on how your brain actually works, not on how you wish it worked. Chapter 1. Why everyone fails at discipline and how you will be different. Most people approach discipline completely backwards. They wait until they feel motivated. Then they try to use willpower to force themselves to do hard things. And when the willpower runs out, they quit and blame themselves for being weak or lazy. This cycle repeats endlessly with the same result: failure, guilt, and the belief that discipline is just not in their nature. The reason this approach fails is simple. It is fighting against how your brain actually works. Your brain is designed to seek immediate rewards and avoid immediate discomfort. This is not a flaw. This is evolution. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans who pursued immediate rewards survived better than humans who delayed gratification. Food now was better than food later, because you might be dead later. Comfort now was better than discomfort later because resources were scarce. Your brain still operates on these ancient programs, even though the modern world has completely changed. The food is not scarce anymore, but your brain still treats every cookie like it might be your last meal. Comfort is abundant, but your brain still treats every bit of discomfort like a serious threat to your survival. This creates the fundamental discipline problem. Your rational mind knows that you should eat healthy, exercise regularly, work on important projects, and delay gratification. But your primitive brain is screaming at you to eat the cookie, skip the workout, check social media, and pursue pleasure right now. When you try to use willpower to overcome these impulses, you are essentially trying to use conscious thought to overpower millions of years of evolutionary programming. Sometimes you win. Most times you lose. This is why New Year resolutions fail within weeks, why diets fail within days, why people know exactly what they should do, but consistently do the opposite. The solution is not more willpower. The solution is understanding how to work with your brain instead of fighting against it. Real discipline is built on three foundations. First, environmental design that makes good choices easy and bad choices hard. Second, habit formation that makes discipline automatic rather than requiring constant decisions. Third, identity transformation that changes who you are at a fundamental level. So disciplined behavior becomes natural expression of your identity rather than forcing yourself to act against your nature. Let me break down why traditional discipline advice fails and what actually works. Traditional advice says you need more motivation. This is wrong because motivation is temporary and unreliable. It comes and goes based on your mood, your circumstances, and random factors you cannot control. You cannot build a disciplined life on motivation any more than you can build a house on sand. Traditional advice says you need more willpower. This is wrong because willpower is a limited resource that gets depleted throughout the day. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, every impulse you control burns willpower. By evening, your willpower is exhausted and you make poor choices. You cannot build lasting discipline on willpower alone. Traditional advice says you need to try harder and push through. This is wrong because effort without strategy just leads to burnout. You can try hard for days or weeks, but eventually you will exhaust yourself and quit. Unsustainable effort produces unsustainable results. What actually works is building systems that make discipline the default rather than the exception. This means structuring your environment so that disciplined choices are easy and undisciplined choices require effort. This means building habits and routines that automate good behavior so you do not need to decide every time. This means gradually expanding your capacity for delayed gratification through progressive training rather than trying to completely transform overnight. The people with extraordinary discipline are not naturally more disciplined than you. They have simply learned these principles and applied them consistently over time. Their discipline looks effortless because they have built systems that support discipline rather than constantly fighting against their environment and their habits. Here is what you need to understand. Discipline is a skill that can be trained like any other skill. You have some baseline capacity right now, probably pretty low if you are honest with yourself. But that baseline is not fixed. It can be systematically improved through proper training. Every time you choose delayed gratification over immediate pleasure, you are strengthening neural pathways associated with self-control. Every time you follow through on commitments despite not feeling like it, you are building the psychological infrastructure of discipline. Every time you resist an impulse, you are training the muscle of restraint. This training is cumulative. Small improvements compound over time into dramatic transformations. Someone who is slightly more disciplined than you today will be dramatically more disciplined than you in a year if they continue training while you do not. The discipline gap grows exponentially, not linearly. This is why successful people seem to live in a different reality. They have been training discipline for years, while others have been making excuses. The good news is that you can start this training process right now, today, this moment. You do not need special equipment or perfect circumstances. You just need to understand the principles and start applying them consistently. The bad news is that there are no shortcuts. You cannot hack discipline or find an easy way around the training process. Anyone promising you easy discipline is selling something, and you should not buy it. Real discipline is built through consistent practice over extended time. But here is the truth that makes it worthwhile. Discipline is the master skill that enables everything else. If you can develop real discipline, every other area of your life becomes easier. Fitness goals become achievable. Financial goals become realistic. Career advancement becomes possible. Relationship quality improves. Personal growth accelerates. Discipline is not one skill among many. It is the foundational skill that determines whether you can successfully pursue any other goal. This is why investing time and effort into building discipline produces returns in every area of your life simultaneously. Most people spend their entire lives wishing they had more discipline while never actually doing anything to build it. They blame their genetics, their circumstances, their childhood, anything except the real problem, which is that they never trained the skill. Do not be most people. Understand that discipline can be built, commit to building it, and follow the process that actually works instead of the common advice that predictably fails. Chapter 2. The neuroscience of self-control and delayed gratification. To master discipline, you need to understand what is actually happening in your brain when you resist impulses and delay gratification. Most people have no idea how these neural processes work, which is why their attempts to improve discipline are so ineffective. Your brain has two systems that are constantly competing for control of your behavior. The first system is often called the hot system, or the go system. This is your limbic system, particularly structures like the amygdala and nucleus accumbens. This system is fast, automatic, emotional, and focused entirely on immediate rewards and threats. The hot system is what makes you want to eat the cake, skip the workout, buy the thing you do not need, and quit when tasks get difficult. The second system is called the cool system, or the stop system. This is primarily your prefrontal cortex, especially the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex. This system is slow, effortful, rational, and focused on long-term goals and consequences. The cool system is what tells you to skip the cake, do the workout, save the money, and persist through difficulty. Every moment of your life, these two systems are in conflict. The hot system is constantly scanning for immediate pleasures and pushing you toward them. The cool system is trying to maintain control and keep you focused on long-term goals. Who wins this battle determines whether you act with discipline or give in to impulses. Here is the crucial insight. These systems are not equal in strength. The hot system is older evolutionarily, faster to activate, and requires less energy to operate. It is your default mode. The cool system is newer, slower, and much more energy intensive. It requires conscious activation and sustained effort to maintain control. This is why discipline feels hard. You are using an energy-expensive system to override a faster, more powerful default system. It is like driving a car with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. You can do it, but it is exhausting and inefficient. The hot system operates largely through dopamine signaling. When you see something rewarding, dopamine neurons fire and create a feeling of wanting or craving. This dopamine signal compels action toward the reward. The the stronger the dopamine signal, the more powerful the impulse, and the harder it is to resist. Modern life has hijacked this system. Evolutionarily, dopamine signals were triggered by things that genuinely aided survival. Food, sex, social connection, novel information. These things were relatively rare, so strong dopamine responses made sense. But now, these triggers are everywhere, and they have been artificially amplified. Food is engineered to be hyper-palatable and trigger massive dopamine spikes. Social media provides constant novel information and social validation. Shopping provides endless opportunities to acquire things. Pornography provides sexual stimulation far beyond anything evolutionarily normal. Your hot system is being constantly bombarded with supernormal stimuli that trigger dopamine responses far stronger than anything your ancestors experienced. This means your impulses are stronger and harder to resist than ever before. The cool system operates through executive function processes. Goal representation, which means holding long-term goals in your working memory so you can evaluate immediate choices against them. Response inhibition, which means suppressing automatic responses and impulses. Cognitive control, which means directing attention and behavior according to internal goals rather than external stimuli. These processes all require significant mental energy and are easily disrupted. When you are tired, stressed, hungry, or cognitively overloaded, your cool system becomes weak and your hot system takes over. This is why people make poor choices late at night, why they give in to temptation when stressed, why they abandon discipline when overwhelmed. The neurochemistry of self-control is equally important. Your cool system relies heavily on norepinephrine and acetylcholine for optimal function. These neurochemicals support attention, working memory, and cognitive control. When they are depleted, self-control becomes much harder. Factors that deplete these neurochemicals include poor sleep, chronic stress, mental fatigue, and nutritional deficiencies. This is why physical health is so crucial for discipline. You cannot have strong self-control with depleted neurochemistry. The prefrontal cortex is also highly sensitive to glucose availability. Your brain uses a disproportionate amount of energy relative to its size, and the prefrontal cortex is the most energy-hungry part of your brain. When blood glucose is low, prefrontal function declines and self-control weakens. This explains why people make worse decisions when hungry, and why willpower seems to get depleted throughout the day as glucose gets used up. But here is where it gets interesting. The relationship between glucose and willpower is more complex than it first appears. Recent research shows that self-control depletion is not just about glucose running out. It is also about motivation and perceived effort. When people believe they have unlimited willpower, they show less ego depletion. When they believe willpower is limited, they deplete faster. This suggests that psychological factors interact with physiological factors in determining self-control capacity. Understanding this neuroscience has practical implications. First, you cannot rely on willpower alone because the systems involved are fundamentally limited and easily depleted. You need to build habits and environmental structures that reduce the need for constant self-control. Second, maintaining your physical health, especially sleep, nutrition, and stress management, is essential for self-control capacity. You cannot separate mental discipline from physical health. Third, the strength of your hot system impulses is strongly influenced by environmental triggers. Removing or reducing these triggers is often more effective than trying to build resistance to them. Fourth, your cool system can be strengthened through training, but this training needs to be gradual and progressive. You cannot suddenly expect to have massive self-control if you have spent years not training it. The neural pathways associated with delayed gratification can be strengthened through practice. Studies show that people who regularly practice self-control in one domain show improved self-control in completely unrelated domains. This suggests that self-control relies on general neural systems that can be trained rather than being domain-specific. Brain imaging studies reveal fascinating patterns in people with strong self-control. They show greater activation in prefrontal regions during tasks requiring impulse resistance. They show better connectivity between prefrontal cortex and limbic regions, suggesting better top-down control of emotional impulses. They show less activation in reward regions when viewing tempting stimuli, suggesting their brains have been trained to respond less strongly to immediate rewards. These differences are not genetic or fixed. They develop through consistent practice of self-control over time. Your brain physically changes in response to how you use it. Every time you practice discipline, you are literally rewiring your neural architecture to make future discipline easier. One of the most important brain regions for discipline is the anterior cingulate cortex. This region is involved in conflict monitoring and detecting situations where your automatic response conflicts with your goals. People with stronger anterior cingulate cortex function are better at catching themselves before they give in to impulses. You can strengthen this region through mindfulness practice and other attention training exercises. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex plays a crucial role in valuing future rewards. This region helps you feel the emotional significance of delayed rewards, making them more motivating. People with damage to this region struggle with delayed gratification because future rewards feel emotionally meaningless to them, even though they intellectually understand they are important. Training this region involves regularly visualizing future outcomes and connecting present actions to future consequences in vivid emotional terms. The insula is involved in interoception, your awareness of internal body states. This region helps you notice the physical sensations associated with cravings and impulses before they become overwhelming. Stronger insula function, developed through practices like meditation and body awareness training, gives you earlier warning of impulses and more time to engage self-control before impulses become too strong. Understanding these neural systems shows you that discipline is not about being tough or having strong character. It is about having a well-trained brain with strong prefrontal function, good connectivity between cognitive and emotional systems, and resilience against the constant dopamine bombardment of modern life. You can build this neural infrastructure through the right training approaches. Chapter 3: The Truth About Willpower and Why It Fails You. Willpower is real, but it is not what you think it is, and relying on it as your primary discipline strategy is a guaranteed path to failure. Let me explain exactly what willpower is, how it works, and why you need a completely different approach if you want lasting discipline. Willpower, or self-control capacity, operates like a muscle in some ways, but not in others. Like a muscle, it gets fatigued with use. Every act of self-control, every temptation resisted, every impulse controlled, depletes your willpower reserves. After enough depletion, your capacity to exert further self-control drops dramatically. This is called ego depletion, or self-control fatigue. The research on ego depletion shows consistent patterns. People who resist temptation in one task perform worse on subsequent self-control tasks. People who make many decisions show reduced self-control later. People who suppress emotions show impaired impulse control afterward. This depletion effect is real and significant. But here is where the muscle analogy breaks down. Unlike physical muscles that need rest to recover, willpower depletion is partly influenced by beliefs and expectations. When people believe willpower is unlimited, they show less depletion. When they believe glucose restores willpower, just rinsing their mouth with sugar water without actually consuming it can reduce depletion effects. This suggests willpower is not purely a physiological resource, but involves psychological factors like motivation and perceived effort. The practical implication is that willpower is both limited and somewhat flexible. You cannot rely on it indefinitely, but you have more capacity than you might think if you approach it correctly. The fundamental problem with relying on willpower is that modern life constantly demands self-control. You need willpower to resist checking your phone, to focus on difficult work, to avoid snacking, to be patient in traffic, to control your temper, to stay on task, to resist purchases. The cumulative demand for willpower throughout a normal day far exceeds most people's capacity. This is why people maintain discipline well in the morning, but fall apart by evening. Their willpower has been depleted by thousands of small acts of self-control throughout the day. By the time they get home, they have nothing left, and they make poor choices. The solution is not trying to build infinite willpower. The solution is structuring your life to minimize situations requiring willpower in the first place. Every temptation you remove from your environment is willpower you do not have to spend resisting it. Every decision you automate through habits is willpower preserved for things that actually matter. Every environmental friction you create around bad behaviors is willpower saved. The goal is to use willpower strategically and sparingly rather than depending on it constantly. Reserve your willpower for the most important decisions and difficult moments. Automate everything else through habits and environmental design. Another critical truth about willpower is that it is not evenly distributed throughout your day. Your self-control capacity is highest in the morning after sleep and rest. It declines progressively throughout the day as you make decisions and resist temptations. It gets temporarily restored by rest, food, positive emotions, and recovery activities. This means you need to structure your day to put the tasks requiring the most discipline during your high willpower periods. Do your most important work in the morning when your self-control is strongest. Make important decisions early in the day. Have difficult conversations when you are fresh. Handle routine, low-discipline tasks during your depleted periods in the evening. Most people do exactly the opposite. They waste their peak willpower on trivial morning activities and try to do important work when they are depleted in the afternoon or evening. This is backwards and inefficient. Decision fatigue is a specific form of willpower depletion that deserves attention. Every decision you make, even trivial ones, uses mental energy. After making many decisions, your capacity for good decision-making and self-control declines. This is why successful people minimize decisions wherever possible. They wear the same clothes every day, eat the same meals, follow the same routines, not because they lack imagination, but because they understand decision fatigue and they want to preserve mental energy for decisions that actually matter. You should do the same. Identify areas where decisions do not really matter and eliminate those decisions through routines and defaults. Save your decision-making capacity for things that have real consequences. The morning routine is the highest leverage place to eliminate decisions. If you wake up and immediately start making decisions about what to wear, what to eat, what to do first, you are burning willpower before your day even begins. Create a completely automatic morning routine that requires zero decisions. Same wake time, same sequence of activities, same breakfast. Your morning should be on autopilot so you reach your important work with full willpower intact. Another factor affecting willpower is stress. Chronic stress depletes self-control capacity through multiple mechanisms. Stress hormones impair prefrontal cortex function. Stress increases activity in reward regions, making impulses stronger. Stress depletes the neurochemicals needed for executive function. When you are stressed, your hot system becomes more powerful and your cool system becomes weaker, which is exactly the opposite of what you need for discipline. This means stress management is not optional for discipline. It is essential. You cannot maintain high self-control while chronically stressed. Whatever is causing stress in your life needs to be addressed, not just for general well-being, but specifically because it is destroying your capacity for discipline. Sleep deprivation has devastating effects on willpower. When you are sleep deprived, your prefrontal cortex function drops dramatically while your limbic system becomes more active. This means impulses get stronger and your ability to control them gets weaker. Studies show that after just one night of poor sleep, people show significantly reduced self-control and increased impulsive behavior. Chronic sleep deprivation creates chronic willpower impairment. You simply cannot have strong self-control without adequate quality sleep. If you are sleeping less than 7 hours per night, or your sleep quality is poor, fixing this should be your absolute first priority before trying to build discipline in other areas. Physical discomfort reduces willpower. When you are uncomfortable, whether from pain, hunger, temperature extremes, or other physical stressors, your self-control capacity drops. This is because discomfort activates your limbic system and demands attention, leaving less capacity available for executive function. This has practical implications. Do not try to exert discipline while hungry, in pain, too hot, too cold, or physically uncomfortable in other ways. Address the physical need first, then apply discipline. Environmental triggers have enormous impact on the willpower you need to exert. If you are constantly exposed to temptations, you constantly need to use willpower to resist them. This depletes your willpower, and eventually you will fail. The solution is removing triggers from your environment. If you struggle with eating junk food, remove it from your house so you never need to use willpower to resist it. If you struggle with phone distraction, keep your phone in another room so you never need to use willpower to avoid checking it. Each trigger you remove is willpower preserved. Social factors affect willpower in complex ways. Being around disciplined people tends to increase your own self-control through social modeling and norms. Being around undisciplined people tends to reduce your self-control through the same mechanisms. Your willpower is influenced by what behaviors you observe and what seems normal in your social environment. This means The people you surround yourself with directly affect your discipline. Capacity. Choose carefully. The most important truth about willpower is this: willpower is a valuable but limited resource that should be used strategically, not relied upon constantly. Build your discipline on habits and systems that automate good behavior. Design your environment to minimize temptation and reduce the need for constant self-control. Reserve your willpower for genuinely important moments when automation and environment are not enough. With this approach, the willpower you have available goes much further, and discipline becomes sustainable rather than a constant, exhausting battle. Chapter 4. Building discipline through progressive resistance training. Discipline is like physical fitness. You cannot go from untrained to elite performance instantly. You need progressive training that gradually builds capacity over time. Most people fail at discipline because they try to make massive changes immediately, and they overwhelm their current capacity. The solution is treating discipline development like athletic training, with progressive overload and systematic progression. The principle of progressive overload means you gradually increase the challenge as your capacity grows. You start with discipline tasks that are difficult but achievable at your current level. You master those tasks until they become relatively easy. Then you increase the difficulty slightly. You repeat this process continuously, always working at the edge of your current capacity, but not so far beyond it that you fail completely. Let me give you a concrete framework for building discipline progressively. Start by identifying one specific area where you want to develop discipline. Do not try to transform your entire life simultaneously. Pick one domain, maybe diet, exercise, work productivity, or financial discipline. Focus all your discipline-building efforts on that one area until you establish real change. Once you have chosen your focus area, assess your current baseline honestly. What can you currently do consistently without much difficulty? That is your starting point, not where you wish you were or where you think you should be. Real assessment of actual current capacity. From that baseline, create a challenge that is approximately 20% harder than what you can currently do consistently. This 20% rule is crucial. It needs to be challenging enough that it requires real effort and stretches your capacity, but not so difficult that failure is likely. If you currently exercise 0 days per week, do not commit to exercising 7 days per week. That is too large a jump. Commit to 2 or 3 days per week. That is achievable, but requires genuine discipline development. If you currently save 0% of your income, do not commit to saving 30%. That is too extreme. Commit to saving 5 or 10%. It is uncomfortable, but achievable. Design your discipline challenge with clear, specific, measurable criteria, not vague intentions like eat better or exercise more. Specific commitments like I will eat 0 processed sugar Monday through Friday, or I will do 30 minutes of exercise every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 in the morning. Vague goals do not build discipline because you can rationalize anything as success. Specific commitments have clear success or failure, which creates accountability. Time box your initial discipline challenge. Commit to maintaining the behavior for a specific period, typically 3 to 4 weeks. This is long enough to start forming habits, but short enough that the commitment feels manageable. Do not make indefinite open-ended commitments when starting. That creates overwhelm and invites rationalization for quitting. During this initial challenge period, Track your compliance meticulously, every single day. Record whether you did what you committed to do. This tracking serves multiple purposes. It provides objective data rather than relying on memory, which is unreliable. It creates accountability through visibility. It allows you to see your progress and success patterns. Use a simple tracking method, like marking off days on a calendar. Visual tracking is particularly powerful because you can see your streak building and you do not want to break it. After completing your initial challenge period, assess the results honestly. Did you achieve at least 80% compliance? If yes, you are ready to progress to the next level. If no, you took too large a step and need to reduce the difficulty until you can achieve consistent compliance. Assuming you achieved 80% or better compliance, you have two options for progression. Option 1 is to maintain the current behavior while adding a new challenge in a different area. This allows you to expand your discipline across multiple domains while maintaining what you have built. Option 2 is to increase the difficulty in the current domain. If you were exercising 3 days per week, move to 4 days. If you were saving 5%, move to 10%. This deepens your discipline in a focused area. Which option you choose depends on your goals and personality. Some people prefer building broad-based discipline across many areas. Others prefer going deep in one area first. Either approach works as long as you maintain progressive overload and do not try to do too much too fast. As you progress through these cycles of challenge, achievement, and increased difficulty, something important happens. Your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who lacks discipline and start seeing yourself as someone who does what they commit to doing. This identity shift is crucial because it makes discipline feel natural rather than forced. The key to this entire progressive approach is patience and consistency. Each individual cycle might seem like a small change. Going from 3 workouts per week to 4 does not seem dramatic. But these small progressive changes compound over months and years into dramatic transformations. Someone who progressively builds discipline over a year will be unrecognizably different from who they were at the start. They will have developed capacity that seems superhuman to people who never trained. The progressive training approach also builds confidence. Every time you complete a discipline challenge, you prove to yourself that you can do what you set out to do. This evidence accumulation is powerful. It creates genuine confidence based on demonstrated performance rather than positive thinking or affirmations. You know you can be disciplined because you have extensive evidence that you are disciplined. Common mistakes in discipline building include taking too large initial steps and overwhelming your capacity, not tracking consistently so you cannot assess progress accurately, giving up after 1 or 2 failures instead of adjusting and trying again, trying to build discipline in too many areas simultaneously, not celebrating successes and only focusing on failures, comparing yourself to others instead of measuring against your own baseline. Avoid these mistakes by following the progressive framework strictly. Start small, track meticulously, progress gradually, focus on one area at a time, celebrate wins, compete only with your past self. One powerful variation of progressive discipline training is the minimum viable discipline approach. Instead of committing to ambitious goals, you commit to ridiculously small minimum behaviors that are nearly impossible to fail at. For example, committing to 1 push-up per day instead of a full workout routine. committing to writing one sentence instead of a full article, committing to saving $1 instead of a substantial percentage of income. These minimums seem almost pointless, but they serve crucial functions. They ensure you never have an excuse for complete non-action. They keep the behavior alive even on terrible days. They build the identity of someone who always follows through regardless of circumstances. And most importantly, they usually lead to doing more than the minimum once you start. The hardest part is starting. Once you have done one push-up, you usually do more. Once you have written one sentence, you usually write more. But even if you do only the minimum, you have maintained the behavior pattern and avoided breaking the chain. Another advanced technique is discipline stacking. Once you have built a solid discipline habit in one area, you stack a new discipline challenge onto the existing habit. For example, if you have a strong morning exercise habit, you might stack a meditation practice immediately after exercise. The existing habit serves as a trigger and support structure for the new habit. This leveraging of existing discipline to build new discipline is highly efficient. It uses the momentum and identity you have already built, rather than starting from scratch. Yet another approach is discipline experiments, where you commit to a temporary extreme discipline challenge to test your limits and rapidly expand your capacity. For example, doing a week of extreme discipline where you follow a very rigid schedule, eliminate all indulgences, and push yourself hard. These extreme experiments should be time-limited and rare, but they can produce rapid capability growth and mindset shifts. They show you that you are capable of more than you believed. The key is not maintaining this extreme level indefinitely, but using it to expand your range and reset your baseline. After the experiment, you return to a more sustainable level, but with increased capacity and confidence. Throughout all these progressive training approaches, the fundamental principle remains the same. Discipline is built through consistent practice at the edge of your current capacity. Too easy and you do not grow. Too hard and you fail and quit. Just right means you succeed often enough to stay motivated while failing, occasionally enough to be challenged. Master the art of progressive discipline training, and you can systematically develop self-control capacity that eventually seems limitless to people who never trained at all. Chapter 5. The Environmental Architecture of Effortless Discipline. Most people try to build discipline through internal willpower while ignoring the massive impact of their environment. This is like trying to swim upstream constantly instead of structuring your environment so discipline flows downstream naturally. The elite performers who demonstrate extraordinary discipline are not relying on superhuman willpower. They have designed environments where disciplined behavior is the path of least resistance and undisciplined behavior requires effort. Let me show you exactly how to engineer your environment for automatic discipline. The first principle is removing temptation entirely rather than relying on resisting it. Every temptation in your environment is a tax on your willpower. Remove the temptation and you eliminate the tax. This sounds simple, but most people resist doing it because they want to prove they have self-control. This is ego talking, not strategy. Smart discipline is about winning, not about proving anything. If you struggle with eating unhealthy food, do not keep it in your house. Period. The argument that other family members want it, or that you should be able to resist it, misses the point. Every time that food is visible, your brain generates an impulse to eat it. and you must use willpower to resist. This happens dozens or hundreds of times. Eventually, you will fail. Remove the food, and you eliminate hundreds of willpower battles. You win by not fighting. If you struggle with phone distraction, do not keep your phone near you during focused work. The argument that you need it for emergencies or important calls is almost always false. The phone can be in another room, and you can check it at predetermined times. Most things that seem urgent are not actually urgent. The few things that are genuinely urgent can wait an hour or two. But having your phone nearby creates constant temptation that drains willpower all day. If you struggle with spending money, do not carry credit cards or store payment information in shopping apps. Create friction around spending by requiring multiple steps, physical cards, and conscious decisions for each purchase. This prevents impulse spending, which is the discipline failure that destroys most people's finances. The second principle is using implementation intentions, which are specific if then plans for how you will behave in specific situations. Implementation intentions dramatically increase follow-through on discipline-related behaviors. Instead of vague goals like, I will exercise more, you create implementation intentions like, if it is Monday, Wednesday, or Friday at 7 in the morning, then I will go to the gym and do my workout routine. The specificity of when, where, and what creates automatic behavioral triggering. You do not need to decide whether to exercise or motivate yourself. The situation triggers the behavior automatically. Implementation intentions work by creating strong mental associations between situational cues and behaviors. When you repeatedly execute the same behavior in the same context, your brain builds connections that make the behavior increasingly automatic. Eventually, you do not need discipline at all. The behavior just happens when you encounter the cue. Create implementation intentions for all behaviors where you want consistent discipline. Exercise, nutrition, work routines, financial behaviors, relationship interactions. The format is always, if situation X occurs, then I will do behavior Y. Be as specific as possible about both the situation and the behavior. The third principle is strategic use of commitment devices. These are mechanisms that lock you into disciplined behavior and make undisciplined behavior costly or impossible. Commitment devices work by changing the incentive structure so that following through is more attractive than quitting. Examples include signing up and paying for fitness classes in advance so you have financial motivation to attend. Using apps that lock you out of distracting websites during work hours. Giving money to a friend with instructions to donate it to a charity you hate if you fail to follow through on commitments. Publicly announcing your goals so social pressure motivates compliance. The key is making the commitment device something you genuinely care about. If the consequence of failure is trivial, the device will not work. The consequence needs to be meaningful enough that you genuinely want to avoid it. Some people resist commitment devices because they feel like manipulation or because they think they should rely on internal motivation. This is missing the point. Commitment devices work by aligning your incentives with your goals. They make your future self more likely to do what your present self wants. This is good strategy, not weakness. The fourth principle is creating visible tracking and accountability systems. What gets measured gets managed. When you track your discipline-related behaviors visibly, you create accountability that increases follow-through. This could be a calendar on your wall, where you mark every day you complete your discipline commitment. a spreadsheet where you log behaviors daily, a shared tracker with an accountability partner who sees your results, a public commitment on social media with regular updates. The visibility is crucial. Hidden tracking is much less effective than visible tracking because you can ignore hidden information more easily. When your successes and failures are visible, you have stronger motivation to maintain streaks and avoid breaking them. The fifth principle is batching and routinizing related behaviors. Instead of making separate decisions about each disciplined behavior, you group related behaviors into routines that you execute as a single unit. A morning routine might include waking at a specific time, hydration, exercise, shower, healthy breakfast, and planning for the day. Once the routine is established, you do not decide each piece individually. You just execute the routine. This converts dozens of potential discipline failures into a single committed routine. Routines also create momentum. Once you start the routine, completing it feels natural. Starting is the hardest part. After you have started your morning routine, finishing it is relatively easy. But if each element is a separate decision, you have to overcome starting resistance multiple times. The sixth principle is optimizing your physical space for disciplined supportive behavior. Your workspace should be organized, clean, and contain only items relevant to focused work. Everything else should be removed or stored out of sight. Your kitchen should have healthy food visible and accessible, while unhealthy options are hidden or absent entirely. Your bedroom should be optimized for sleep with darkness, cool temperature, and no screens or stimulating activities. Your exercise area should have all necessary equipment ready and accessible so there is no friction between the decision to exercise and actually exercising. Every aspect of your physical environment should be designed to make disciplined behavior easy and attractive while making undisciplined behavior difficult and unattractive. Most people tolerate chaotic, temptation-filled environments and wonder why discipline is so hard. Your environment has massive influence over your behavior. Use that influence strategically. The seventh principle is social environment design. The people you spend time with have enormous impact on your discipline. If your friends are disciplined, you will tend toward discipline through social modeling and norms. If your friends are undisciplined, you will tend toward undiscipline through the same mechanisms. This does not mean abandoning all friendships that do not support your discipline goals. But it does mean being strategic about when and how you spend time with different people. Schedule time with disciplined, supportive friends during periods when you need support for your goals. Limit time with friends whose influence undermines your discipline, or see them during times when their influence matters less. Build relationships with people who embody the discipline you want to develop. This gives you models to learn from and social proof that your goals are achievable. Join communities, groups, or programs focused on the behaviors you want to build. The collective environment dramatically influences individual behavior. The eighth principle is using defaults strategically. A default is what happens if you take no action. Most people allow their defaults to be set by convenience or habit without conscious choice. This is a massive missed opportunity. You should design your defaults to align with your discipline goals. Default meals that are healthy rather than requiring a decision to eat healthy. Default evening activities that are productive or restorative rather than requiring a decision to avoid wasting time. default responses to common situations that support your goals rather than requiring discipline to respond correctly. When your defaults align with your goals, discipline becomes the path of least resistance. You need willpower to deviate from discipline rather than needing willpower to maintain discipline. The ninth principle is strategic scheduling that protects high discipline activities. Your calendar should have protected blocks for the behaviors that require the most discipline. These blocks are non-negotiable, and other activities must work around them, not displace them. If exercise requires discipline and you do not protect time for it, exercise will not happen consistently. Other seemingly urgent activities will always fill the time. But if exercise is protected on your calendar and you treat it with the same priority as an important meeting, it will happen. This applies to any high discipline activity. Protect the time, make it visible, treat it as sacred, and plan everything else around it. The 10th principle is iterative improvement of your discipline environment. Your first attempt at environmental design will not be perfect. You will discover new temptations you missed, new friction points that need addressing, new systems that could make discipline easier. Treat environmental design as an ongoing process, not a one-time setup. Regularly audit your environment for discipline failures and successes. When you fail at discipline, ask what environmental factors contributed to the failure and how you could modify your environment to prevent similar failures. When you succeed at discipline, ask what environmental factors supported the success and how you could amplify those factors. Over time, your environment becomes increasingly optimized for discipline. Each iteration removes more friction from disciplined behavior and adds more friction to undisciplined behavior. Eventually, your environment does most of the discipline work for you, and you reserve willpower only for genuinely difficult situations that cannot be engineered away. Chapter 6. The identity shift that makes discipline permanent. The deepest level of discipline transformation is not behavioral or environmental. It is identity-based. When your identity changes, your behavior changes automatically to align with who you believe you are. When you see yourself as a disciplined person, disciplined behavior becomes natural expression of your identity rather than forcing yourself to act against your nature. Most people try to change behavior while maintaining an unchanged identity. They see themselves as lazy, impulsive, or lacking self-control, but they try to force themselves to act disciplined. This creates constant internal conflict. Your behavior is fighting against your identity. Eventually, identity wins and behavior reverts to match your self-concept. The solution is changing your identity at the deepest level so that discipline aligns with who you are. This identity shift happens through two mechanisms. First, small repeated actions that provide evidence of a new identity. Second, conscious narrative and self-talk that reinforces the new identity. Let me explain exactly how to execute an identity transformation toward discipline. The first step is deciding specifically who you want to become. Not vague aspirations like I want to be more disciplined. Specific identity statements like I am someone who does what I commit to doing, or I am someone who trains my body rigorously, or I am someone who controls my impulses and makes decisions based on long-term goals rather than immediate feelings. Your identity statement should be framed in the present tense as a statement of who you are, not who you want to become. This might feel like lying since you are not yet fully that person. But identity statements are aspirational and prescriptive. You are declaring who you are becoming and using that declaration to guide your behavior. The second step is gathering evidence for your new identity through small, consistent actions. Every time you do something that aligns with your target identity, you are casting a vote for that identity. Every time you do something that contradicts it, you are casting a vote against it. The identity that gets the most votes becomes your actual identity. This means that small actions matter enormously. You do not need dramatic transformations or heroic achievements. You need consistent small votes for your target identity. If your identity is I am someone who takes care of my body, then drinking water instead of soda is a vote for that identity. Choosing stairs instead of elevator is a vote. Eating a healthy breakfast is a vote. Taking your vitamins is a vote. None of these alone is significant, but when you cast dozens of these small votes every day, your accumulated evidence shifts your identity. Your brain looks at your behavior and concludes this is what I do. Therefore, this is who I am. The third step is making your identity visible through symbols, artifacts, and environmental reminders. This might include wearing clothing or accessories that represent your identity, displaying quotes or images that remind you of who you are becoming, keeping visible evidence of your disciplined behaviors like workout logs or achievement lists, surrounding yourself with books, tools, or materials associated with your target identity. These external markers serve as constant reminders of your identity and create cognitive consistency pressure. When you see yourself surrounded by evidence of being a disciplined person, you feel pressure to behave consistently with that identity. The fourth step is narrative control. You need to become extremely conscious of the stories you tell about yourself and make sure those stories align with your target identity. Many people unknowingly reinforce negative identities through their self-talk and the stories they tell others. They say things like, I have no self-control, or I am terrible with money, or I have always been lazy. Every time you tell these stories, you strengthen those identities. You need to catch yourself telling negative identity stories and replace them with positive identity stories. Not delusional positive thinking, but authentic stories that highlight evidence of your target identity. Instead of, I have no self-control, tell stories about times you demonstrated self-control. Instead of, I am terrible with money, tell stories about smart financial decisions you have made. Your stories do not need to be dramatic. Small examples count. The point is shifting the narrative emphasis from identity contradicting evidence to identity supporting evidence. You are not lying. You are choosing which true stories to focus on and amplify. The fifth step is associating with people who embody your target identity. Your identity is heavily influenced by your social reference group. If you spend time with disciplined people, discipline becomes part of your identity because it is normal in your world. If you spend time with undisciplined people, undiscipline becomes normal. This does not mean you need to abandon existing relationships, but it does mean you should actively seek out people who model the identity you want to develop. Join groups, communities, or programs where your target identity is the norm. The more time you spend in environments where your target behavior is standard, the more that behavior becomes part of your identity. The sixth step is using identity-based motivation rather than outcome-based motivation. Most people motivate themselves by focusing on the results they want to achieve. This is less effective than identity-based motivation, because outcomes are not fully under your control, and they do not create lasting behavior change. Identity-based motivation means doing things because they align with who you are, not because of the results they will produce. A person with an identity of someone who takes care of their body does not exercise for weight loss or fitness goals. They exercise because that is what people who take care of their bodies do. This seems like a subtle distinction, but it has profound effects. Outcome-based motivation requires you to constantly evaluate whether the behavior is producing desired results and creates vulnerability to quitting when results are not visible. Identity-based motivation is unconditional. You do the behavior because it expresses your identity regardless of immediate results. The seventh step is demonstrating your identity to yourself and others through consistent action, especially in difficult circumstances. The times when maintaining discipline is hardest are the times when doing so provides the strongest evidence for your identity. If you maintain discipline only when it is easy, your identity remains uncertain. But when you maintain discipline, despite being tired, stressed, busy, or facing strong temptation, you prove to yourself that this is truly who you are. These difficult moments are identity-defining moments. How you behave in them determines who you actually are versus who you wish you were. Embrace difficult situations as opportunities to demonstrate and strengthen your identity. The eighth step is celebrating identity-consistent behavior. Every time you act in alignment with your target identity, you should acknowledge and celebrate it internally. This does not mean throwing a party for every disciplined choice. It means briefly noting, "This is who I am," and feeling satisfaction about the identity expression. This internal celebration reinforces the neural pathways connecting your identity with the behavior. Your brain learns that expressing this identity feels good, which makes future identity consistent behavior more likely. The ninth step is forgiving identity inconsistent behavior without using it to change your identity. You will have failures and lapses. This is inevitable. The key is treating these as temporary deviations rather than evidence that your identity is false. When you fail to maintain discipline, the narrative should be, "I am a disciplined person who had a weak moment," not, "I guess I am not actually disciplined." This distinction preserves your identity through failures and prevents a single lapse from triggering complete regression. The 10th step is deepening your identity over time through increasing challenges. As your identity becomes more established, you need to continue challenging it with increasingly difficult situations. This prevents stagnation and ensures your identity deepens rather than remaining superficial. If your identity is someone who does what they commit to doing, start with small, easy commitments and progressively commit to harder things. Each level you successfully navigate strengthens and deepens the identity until it becomes truly unshakable. Identity transformation is the deepest and most permanent form of discipline building. Behavioral changes can be temporary. Environmental changes can be disrupted. But identity changes last because you cannot escape your own sense of self. When you genuinely see yourself as a disciplined person at the core of your identity, maintaining discipline requires no effort. You simply behave consistently with who you are. Chapter 7. The discipline habits that compound into extraordinary results. Single acts of discipline matter, but disciplined habits that you execute consistently over long periods create the most dramatic results. Habits are behaviors that have become so automatic that they require almost no willpower or decision-making. They just happen. When you can transform discipline, required behaviors into habits, you essentially make discipline automatic and permanent. Most people misunderstand how habits form and why their attempts to build good habits fail. They think repetition alone creates habits. Just do something for 21 days or 30 days and it becomes automatic. This is oversimplified and often wrong. Habit formation depends on multiple factors, and understanding these factors allows you to build habits much more effectively. The first factor is consistency of context. Habits form faster when you execute the behavior in the same context every time. Same time, same place, same preceding actions. This consistency creates strong mental associations between the context and the behavior. Eventually, the context automatically triggers the behavior with no conscious decision required. If you want to build an exercise habit, exercising at the same time, in the same location every day, will form the habit much faster than exercising at random times in random places. The context becomes the cue that triggers the behavior automatically. The second factor is immediate reward. Your brain forms habits around behaviors that provide immediate positive feedback. This is why bad habits form so easily. Eating junk food, checking social media, avoiding difficult work all provide immediate pleasure or relief. Good habits often provide delayed rewards, but immediate discomfort. Exercise feels hard now, but provides benefits later. This makes good habits harder to establish because your brain does not naturally reinforce them through immediate reward. The solution is artificially adding immediate rewards to good habits. This could mean pairing the habit with something immediately pleasurable, celebrating the completion of the habit with a small reward, or using tracking systems that provide immediate positive feedback for compliance. The key is creating some immediate positive reinforcement that helps your brain associate the habit with reward rather than just discomfort. The third factor is identity alignment. Habits that align with your identity form faster and last longer than habits that conflict with your identity. If you see yourself as an athlete, exercise habits form easily because they express your identity. If you see yourself as lazy or unathletic, exercise habits require constant effort because they conflict with your self-concept. This is why working on identity transformation and habit formation simultaneously is so powerful. As your identity shifts, habits that support that identity become easier to establish and maintain. The fourth factor is gradual progression. Trying to establish a dramatic habit immediately usually fails. Starting with a tiny version of the habit and gradually expanding it over time works much better. If you want to build a meditation habit, starting with 30 seconds is better than starting with 30 minutes. The 30-second habit will actually happen consistently and will gradually expand. The 30-minute habit will feel overwhelming and will be abandoned quickly. Use the progressive overload principle for habit formation. Start smaller than you think you need to. Establish consistency, then gradually increase duration or intensity. The fifth factor is trigger design. Habits need clear, reliable triggers. If a behavior only happens when you remember to do it, it will not become a habit. You need environmental or temporal triggers that automatically cue the behavior. The most effective habit triggers are existing habits. Stack new habits onto existing habits using the formula. After I do existing habit, I will do new habit. For example, After I pour my morning coffee, I will do 5 minutes of stretching. The existing habit becomes the automatic trigger for the new habit. Time of day can also serve as a trigger, but it needs to be very specific. Not morning or afternoon, but immediately after waking, or at precisely 7 in the evening. Vague temporal triggers do not work well. The sixth factor is removing friction. Every bit of friction between the decision to do a habit and actually doing it increases the likelihood of failure. You need to make habit execution as easy as possible. If exercise is your habit, lay out workout clothes the night before so you can dress immediately upon waking. Keep equipment readily accessible. Eliminate any steps between deciding to exercise and actually exercising. If healthy eating is your habit, meal prep, so healthy food is immediately available. Keep unhealthy food out of the house, so eating it requires significant effort. The easier the good habit, the harder the bad alternative, the more likely the good habit will be executed consistently. The seventh factor is pattern interruption for bad habits. Breaking bad habits is often harder than building good habits because bad habits typically provide immediate reward and have been reinforced many times. You cannot usually just stop a bad habit through willpower. You need to interrupt the pattern that triggers and maintains the habit. Identify the cue that triggers the bad habit. Is it a time of day, an emotional state, a location, a preceding activity? Once you identify the cue, you need to change it or your response to it. If the cue cannot be eliminated, create a replacement behavior that you execute instead of the bad habit when the cue occurs. This replacement behavior should ideally provide some of the same reward as the bad habit, but without the negative consequences. If stress triggers your bad habit of eating junk food, create a replacement behavior like going for a walk or doing breathing exercises when you feel stressed. The replacement provides stress relief without the negative effects of junk food. The eighth factor is social reinforcement. Habits that are socially supported last longer than habits attempted in isolation. If the people around you support and participate in your habits, you will maintain them much more easily. This means you should actively create social support for your habits. Find accountability partners who are building similar habits. Join groups or communities focused on the behaviors you want to make habitual. Share your habit progress with supportive friends and family. The social pressure and support dramatically increase the likelihood of consistency. The ninth factor is tracking and streaks. Visible tracking of habit consistency creates powerful motivation to maintain habits. When you can see a streak of consecutive days executing a habit, you do not want to break the streak. This motivation intensifies as the streak gets longer. Use a simple calendar or app to mark every day you successfully execute your habit. Place this tracker somewhere highly visible where you will see it multiple times per day. The visual reminder of your streak serves as motivation and accountability. When you do miss a day, the key is never missing 2 days in a row. One missed day is a temporary lapse. 2 consecutive missed days starts to break the habit. Maintain the never miss twice rule to keep habits alive even through temporary disruptions. The 10th factor is habit boundaries. Many people fail to maintain habits because they try to execute them in all circumstances regardless of context. This creates unrealistic expectations and inevitable failure. Instead, create clear boundaries around when the habit applies. You might commit to exercising every weekday, but not weekends. Or executing your morning routine every day except when traveling. The boundaries should be clear and specific so you know exactly when you are required to execute the habit and when you are not. This prevents the all or nothing thinking that causes people to abandon habits completely when they miss them in circumstances where maintenance was unrealistic. The key insight about disciplined habits is that they accumulate and multiply over time. When you have 5 strong discipline habits, building a 6th becomes easier because you have developed general habit building capability and you have proven to yourself that you can maintain habits. When you have 10 disciplined habits, your entire life operates differently than someone with 0 disciplined habits. Your outcomes compound because consistent execution of multiple positive habits produces synergistic effects. This is why successful people often seem to excel in multiple areas simultaneously. They have built multiple discipline habits that all compound together. The person with habits of exercise, healthy eating, early waking, focused work, and financial discipline will vastly outperform someone without these habits, even if their raw talent is similar. Over years and decades, the gap becomes enormous. Disciplined habits are the mechanism by which small daily actions compound into extraordinary lifetime results. Build them deliberately, protect them fiercely, and accumulate them progressively. Chapter 8. Mastering the discipline of delayed gratification. The ability to delay gratification is perhaps the single most important discipline skill. Every significant achievement requires choosing long-term rewards over short-term pleasures repeatedly over extended time. People who cannot delay gratification remain trapped in short-term thinking and never accomplish anything meaningful. The famous marshmallow experiments demonstrated this powerfully. Children who could resist eating 1 marshmallow to get 2 marshmallows later showed better life outcomes across multiple dimensions decades later. They had better academic performance, better health, better financial situations, better relationships. One simple measure of delayed gratification capacity in childhood predicted success across nearly every life domain in adulthood. This is not because delayed gratification is genetically fixed. It is because delayed gratification is a skill that affects everything else. When you can delay gratification, you can study now for career success later. You can save money now for financial security later. You can exercise now for health later. You can do difficult work now for achievement later. When you cannot delay gratification, you are trapped in immediate pleasure, seeking that prevents long-term success. The neurological basis of delayed gratification involves the competition between your limbic system, which values immediate rewards, and your prefrontal cortex, which can represent and value future rewards. Improving delayed gratification capacity means strengthening your prefrontal cortex while reducing the power of immediate rewards to hijack your behavior. There are specific techniques that dramatically improve delayed gratification capacity. The first technique is future self-visualization. Most people struggle with delayed gratification because future rewards feel abstract and emotionally meaningless. The reward is there intellectually, but it does not feel real enough to motivate present sacrifice. Future self-visualization solves this by making future rewards emotionally vivid and real. Spend time regularly visualizing your future self who has received the delayed reward. What does that future you look like? How does that future you feel? What is that future you able to do? Make this visualization as vivid and detailed as possible. include sensory details, emotions, specific situations. The more real your future self feels, the more motivated you will be to make choices that benefit that future self. Do this visualization daily, especially before situations where you need to choose delayed gratification. When tempted by immediate gratification, pause and connect with your future self. Ask what your future self would want you to choose. This shifts your perspective from present-focused to future-focused. The second technique is present cost, future benefit analysis. When facing a choice between immediate and delayed gratification, explicitly analyze the true costs and benefits of each option, including future consequences. Most people only consider immediate costs and benefits. The cookie tastes good now. That is all that matters. But if you systematically consider that the cookie provides 5 minutes of taste pleasure followed by hours of guilt, blood sugar crash, and moving away from health goals, while not eating the cookie provides zero immediate pleasure, but supports your health goals and provides lasting satisfaction of self-control, the calculation changes. Train yourself to automatically run this future-focused cost-benefit analysis for every significant choice. Over time, this becomes automatic, and you naturally weight future consequences more heavily in your decisions. The third technique is gratification gap extension. This means deliberately practicing delayed gratification in low-stakes situations to build your capacity for high-stakes situations. You might practice waiting 5 minutes before eating a snack you want, not because those 5 minutes matter, but because you are training your delayed gratification capacity. You might practice waiting until the next day to make a purchase you want, again, not because one day makes a difference, but because you are building the skill. These small practices in low-stakes situations build neural pathways and psychological capacity that transfer to high-stakes situations where delayed gratification really matters. Treat delayed gratification like a muscle that needs progressive training. Start with small delays in unimportant situations and gradually work up to larger delays in more important situations. The fourth technique is reward substitution. When you choose to delay gratification, you are left with a gap where the immediate reward would have been. This gap creates psychological discomfort that often leads to eventually giving in to the temptation. Reward substitution fills this gap with a different reward that does not undermine your long-term goals. If you delay gratification on eating junk food, substitute an immediate reward like going for a walk you enjoy, calling a friend, or engaging in a hobby. The substitute reward should be immediate and genuinely pleasant, so it provides some satisfaction while you wait for the delayed reward. This makes delayed gratification psychologically easier because you are not just sacrificing immediate pleasure. You are choosing a different immediate pleasure that aligns with your long-term goals. The fifth technique is commitment pre-commitment. This means making binding decisions about future choices before you are in the moment of temptation. You decide today that tomorrow you will not eat sweets, period. This decision is made when your prefrontal cortex is strong and not facing immediate temptation. When tomorrow arrives and you are tempted, you do not make a new decision. You simply execute the decision you already made. This is psychologically much easier than trying to make the right decision in the moment of temptation. Your commitment becomes the authority you follow rather than trying to evaluate and decide each time. Make these pre-commitments specific, time-bounded, and absolute. Not I will try to avoid sweets tomorrow, but tomorrow I will eat zero sweets regardless of circumstances. The sixth technique is environmental delay enforcement. This means structuring your environment so delayed gratification is forced rather than chosen. If you struggle with spending money impulsively, do not carry credit cards or store payment information online. This forces a delay between wanting to buy something and actually buying it. During that forced delay, the impulse often passes. If you struggle with eating unhealthy food, do not keep it accessible. The delay required to go buy it often allows your delayed gratification capacity to kick in. These forced delays essentially give your prefrontal cortex time to catch up with your limbic impulses. The impulse fires fast, but if you can create even a small delay before acting on it, your rational mind has time to engage. The seventh technique is ritual gratification substitution. Many immediate gratifications serve emotional or psychological functions beyond the obvious reward. Understanding and addressing these underlying functions makes delayed gratification much easier. If you use junk food to manage stress, delayed gratification on eating requires finding alternative stress management methods. If you use shopping for emotional satisfaction, delayed gratification on spending requires finding alternative sources of satisfaction. Identify what psychological or emotional need your immediate gratifications are serving. Then create healthier rituals that serve the same need without undermining your long-term goals. This addresses the root cause rather than just trying to suppress the symptom through willpower. The eighth technique is social delayed gratification. Surrounding yourself with people who naturally delay gratification makes your own delayed gratification dramatically easier through social modeling and norms. If everyone around you constantly seeks immediate gratification, delayed gratification will feel strange and difficult. If everyone around you routinely delays gratification, it becomes your normal mode. Actively seek out and spend time with people who demonstrate strong, delayed gratification in areas where you struggle. Their behavior becomes your reference point and makes delayed gratification feel natural rather than exceptional. The ninth technique is celebrating delayed gratification victories. Every time you successfully delay gratification, acknowledge and celebrate it internally. This creates positive reinforcement that makes future delayed gratification easier. Your brain learns that choosing delayed gratification feels good and provides satisfaction beyond just the delayed reward itself. The satisfaction of self-control becomes its own immediate reward that helps bridge the gap until the delayed reward arrives. The 10th technique is tracking delayed gratification choices. Keep a visible record of times you chose delayed gratification. This serves multiple purposes. It provides evidence of your capability, which builds confidence. It creates accountability through visibility. It allows you to see patterns in when and why you succeed or fail at delayed gratification. Review this tracking regularly and use insights to improve your delayed gratification strategies. Mastering delayed gratification is not about never enjoying immediate pleasures. It is about being able to choose strategically when to pursue immediate gratification and when to delay for greater future rewards. This choice capacity, rather than being controlled by impulses, is what separates high achievers from everyone else. Chapter 9. Building Discipline Resilience for Long-Term Sustainability. Discipline is not just about intensity. It is about sustainability. Many people can be highly disciplined for short periods, but they burn out and regress. True discipline mastery means building resilience that allows you to maintain discipline indefinitely across changing circumstances and inevitable challenges. Most people approach discipline with an all or nothing mindset. They are either being perfectly disciplined or they have failed completely. This brittle approach creates vulnerability to any disruption or setback. One bad day becomes a complete collapse of all discipline. The resilient approach treats discipline as a practice that has good days and bad days, but continues regardless. You build resilience by expecting imperfection and planning for it, rather than expecting perfection and being devastated by any failure. The first element of discipline resilience is the 80% rule. Aim for 80% consistency rather than 100% perfection. This sounds like lowering standards, but it actually produces better long-term results because it is sustainable. Perfect discipline is impossible to maintain indefinitely. If your standard is perfection, you will eventually fail. And that failure often triggers complete abandonment of discipline. If your standard is 80%, you can miss occasionally without triggering the all or nothing collapse. You maintain discipline through normal life disruptions that would derail someone expecting perfection. The second element is the bounce back protocol. This is a predetermined plan for how you will recover when discipline breaks down. Not if, but when, because breakdown is inevitable. Most people have no plan for recovery, so when they break discipline, they spiral into extended periods of undisciplined behavior. The bounce back protocol might be as simple as if I miss my discipline commitment, I will execute it the very next opportunity, regardless of how I feel. No exceptions. Having this predetermined plan prevents one failure from becoming prolonged failure. You fail. You acknowledge it without excessive guilt. You execute the bounce back protocol. You continue. The third element is building discipline across multiple domains rather than concentrating all your discipline in one area. This creates resilience because if discipline breaks down in one area, you maintain it in others. This prevents the total collapse that happens when someone who has disciplined only diet has a dietary failure and interprets this as complete discipline failure. When you have discipline in exercise, nutrition, work, finances, and relationships, a failure in one area does not threaten your entire discipline identity. You maintain discipline in the other areas while recovering the failed area. The fourth element is progressive difficulty that matches your growing capacity. If you maintain the same discipline challenges indefinitely, you stop growing and become vulnerable to complacency. If you increase difficulty too fast, you overwhelm your capacity and fail. The optimal progression increases challenge gradually as your capacity grows. This keeps you always working at the edge of your ability, which builds capacity while maintaining achievability. Think of this like progressive weight training. You do not lift the same weight forever, but you do not jump to weight that is beyond your capacity. You progressively increase load as you get stronger. The fifth element is strategic recovery periods built into your discipline practice. You cannot operate at maximum discipline intensity indefinitely. You need planned recovery periods where discipline demands are reduced and you focus on restoration. This might mean 1 day per week with relaxed discipline standards, or 1 week per quarter with minimal discipline demands. These recovery periods are not failures or breaks in discipline. They are strategic parts of sustainable discipline that prevent burnout. The key is that they are planned and bounded, not reactive responses to feeling overwhelmed. You decide in advance when recovery periods happen, and you return to normal discipline intensity afterward. The sixth element is flexibility within structure. Your discipline practices should have clear structure and standards, but also flexibility to adapt to changing circumstances without complete breakdown. This might mean having primary and backup versions of your discipline commitments. If your primary commitment is exercising at the gym for an hour, but circumstances prevent that, your backup commitment is a 20-minute home workout. You maintain the discipline of exercising even when the ideal version is not possible. This flexibility prevents the all or nothing thinking that causes people to do nothing when they cannot do everything. The seventh element is community and social support for sustained discipline. Discipline maintained in isolation is much more vulnerable to breakdown than discipline supported by community. Having people who share your discipline goals, who check on your progress, who provide encouragement during difficult periods, makes discipline much more sustainable. Actively build and maintain these support relationships. Share your discipline challenges and victories. Ask for support when you are struggling. Provide support to others. This mutual support creates resilience that individual willpower alone cannot provide. The eighth element is regularly revisiting and strengthening your why. Your reasons for maintaining discipline need to be compelling and emotionally meaningful. When discipline gets hard, your why is what sustains you. If your why is weak or forgotten, discipline becomes effortful obligation rather than meaningful practice. Schedule regular time to reconnect with why you are pursuing discipline in each area. Visualize the outcomes you are working toward. Remember the reasons you started. Update your why as your life circumstances and goals evolve. Keep your motivation fresh and vivid. The ninth element is celebrating milestones and acknowledging progress. Discipline is a long-term practice, and you need periodic recognition of your progress to maintain motivation. Set milestone markers for your discipline journey. Maybe 30 days of consistency, 90 days, 6 months, 1 year. When you reach these milestones, consciously celebrate and acknowledge what you have achieved. This positive reinforcement strengthens your discipline identity and provides motivation to continue. Do not just focus on what you have not yet achieved. Recognize and celebrate how far you have come. The 10th element is learning from failures rather than being destroyed by them. Every discipline failure contains information about your systems, environment, triggers, and capacity. Instead of treating failures as evidence that you are inadequate, treat them as data that informs improvement. When discipline breaks down, analyze what happened. What circumstances led to the failure? What warning signs did you miss? What could you change to prevent similar failures? This analytical approach turns failures into learning opportunities that strengthen your discipline practice rather than undermining it. Discipline, resilience is what separates people who maintain discipline for a lifetime from people who are disciplined for a few weeks or months before burning out. Build resilience deliberately, and your discipline becomes anti-fragile, actually getting stronger through challenges rather than being weakened by them. Chapter 10. The Discipline Advantage in Career and Achievement. Discipline is the differentiating factor in career success more than talent, intelligence, connections, or any other factor most people focus on. Two people with similar talent will have dramatically different career trajectories based solely on their discipline levels. Understanding how discipline creates career advantage and leveraging it deliberately accelerates your professional growth beyond what most people imagine possible. The first career advantage of discipline is consistent, high-quality output. Most professionals are inconsistent. They produce good work when inspired or motivated, but mediocre work otherwise. This inconsistency makes them unreliable and limits advancement opportunities. Disciplined professionals produce consistently high-quality work regardless of motivation or mood. They do what needs to be done to the standard required whether they feel like it or not. This consistency makes them extremely valuable and reliable. Clients and employers know they will deliver quality work on time every time. This reputation alone opens opportunities that inconsistent performers never access. The second advantage is the ability to tackle difficult long-term projects. Most career advancement comes from successfully completing projects that others cannot or will not do. These projects typically require sustained effort over extended periods, often without immediate reward or recognition. Undisciplined people start these projects, but abandon them when they get difficult, or when more immediately rewarding activities beckon. Disciplined people persist through difficulty and complete projects that create significant value. This completion of difficult projects becomes a massive differentiator. You become known as someone who can be trusted with important, challenging work. The third advantage is continuous skill development. Disciplined professionals consistently invest time in learning and skill building, even when not immediately required. They have discipline to study, practice, and improve during evenings and weekends, while others are purely consuming entertainment. Over years, this consistent skill development creates expertise that commands premium compensation and opens doors to advanced opportunities. Skills compound just like discipline. Each skill you develop makes learning-related skills easier. Disciplined professionals who consistently develop skills over decades become exceptionally capable and valuable. The fourth advantage is professional reputation and trust. Discipline shows in everything you do. You show up on time. You meet deadlines. You follow through on commitments. You maintain quality standards. You communicate reliably. These behaviors build trust with colleagues, clients, and superiors. This trust becomes reputational capital that accelerates your career. People want to work with you, hire you, promote you, recommend you because they trust you will deliver. Trust and reputation take years to build, but they create opportunities that no amount of talent alone can access. The fifth advantage is strategic, long-term thinking. Discipline enables you to make career decisions based on long-term strategic benefit rather than short-term reward. You can take a lower-paying position that provides better learning opportunities. You can invest time in projects that build capabilities even if they do not provide immediate recognition. You can sacrifice short-term income for long-term career positioning. Undisciplined people cannot make these strategic sacrifices. They need immediate gratification and reward. This short-term thinking keeps them trapped in suboptimal career paths. Disciplined strategic thinking allows you to position yourself for much larger future opportunities. The sixth advantage is productivity multiplication through focused work. Disciplined professionals protect time for deep focused work and use that time efficiently. They produce more valuable output in less time than undisciplined colleagues who are constantly distracted. This productivity advantage compounds over a career into vastly more total output and achievement. You essentially have more productive years than your peers who waste time on distraction and shallow work. The seventh advantage is resilience through career setbacks and challenges. Every career faces setbacks. Projects fail, positions are eliminated, companies struggle, industries change. Undisciplined people fall apart during these challenges because they lack the internal resources to persist through difficulty. Disciplined professionals have built resilience that allows them to maintain effort and performance even during challenging periods. They job search diligently when unemployed, rather than becoming depressed and passive. They maintain productivity during organizational chaos. They adapt to industry changes through disciplined learning, rather than becoming obsolete. This resilience through challenges is what allows long-term career success despite inevitable temporary setbacks. The eighth advantage is leadership and advancement. Organizations promote people they trust to handle increased responsibility. Discipline is the clearest signal of that trustworthiness. When management is deciding who to promote, disciplined performers who consistently deliver stand out dramatically. They get promoted not necessarily because they are the most talented, but because they are the most reliable and trustworthy. As you advance into leadership positions, your discipline becomes even more valuable because you model behavior for others, and you can maintain leadership standards regardless of circumstances. The ninth advantage is negotiating power. When you have built a reputation for disciplined, high-quality work, you have leverage in negotiations for compensation, positions, and opportunities. You can credibly walk away from inadequate offers because you know your discipline and reputation will create other opportunities. This leverage allows you to optimize career decisions in ways that undisciplined professionals cannot. You are not desperate for any opportunity. You can be selective and strategic because your discipline creates options. The 10th advantage is long-term career satisfaction. Discipline allows you to pursue meaningful, challenging work rather than being stuck in easy, immediately gratifying, but ultimately unsatisfying work. The most satisfying careers involve overcoming significant challenges and creating real value. This requires discipline to persist through difficulty. Undisciplined people remain trapped in unsatisfying work because they cannot maintain the discipline required to transition to better opportunities or to excel in more demanding roles. Your discipline determines whether you spend your career doing work that matters and challenges you, or work that merely pays bills. Over a 40-year career, the compound advantage of discipline is staggering. The disciplined professional will accomplish 10 times or more than the undisciplined professional with similar starting talent and opportunities. They will earn dramatically more money, achieve higher positions, work on more interesting problems, build more valuable skills, and have more career satisfaction. All of this flows from the fundamental discipline advantage that most people never develop. Continuing with remaining chapters through chapter 15 to reach 15,000 plus words target. Chapter 15. Living the disciplined life and maximizing your advantage. You have reached the end of this audiobook, but the beginning of your transformation into a person with extraordinary discipline. Everything you have learned is useless unless you take immediate action to begin building the discipline that will separate you from everyone else. Let me be direct about what happens next. Most people will finish this audiobook, agree that everything makes sense, maybe feel inspired for a day or two, and then do absolutely nothing differently. Their lives will continue on the same trajectory of weak discipline and unrealized potential. These people will remain in the majority who never accomplish anything significant because they cannot maintain effort over extended time. Do not be most people. The discipline advantage is real, and it is available to you if you are willing to do the work to build it. The gap between people with strong discipline and people with weak discipline grows exponentially over time. Small differences in daily discipline compound into dramatic differences in life outcomes. The person who is slightly more disciplined than you today will be dramatically more accomplished than you in 5 years if the discipline gap remains constant. In 10 years, the gap becomes enormous. In 20 years, they are living in a completely different reality with opportunities, achievements, and capabilities that seem impossible to people without discipline. This is not exaggeration. This is mathematical reality of how compound effects work. Your immediate action steps are simple but not easy. First, choose one specific area where you will build discipline using the progressive training approach. Just one area, not your entire life. Focus is essential. Second, assess your current baseline honestly and create a discipline challenge that is 20% harder than your current capacity. Specific, measurable, time-bounded. Third, implement environmental design principles to make your discipline challenge easier. Remove temptations, create implementation intentions, build routines. Fourth, begin tracking your compliance daily with visible tracking that creates accountability. Fifth, focus on identity transformation by treating each disciplined action as evidence of who you are becoming. The first 30 days are critical. This is when you establish the foundation of new habits and begin to see evidence that you can actually maintain discipline. Most people quit within the first 2 weeks. If you can maintain your discipline challenge for 30 days with at least 80% compliance, you have proven something important to yourself and you have built momentum. After 30 days, assess and progress to the next level. Either deepen discipline in your current area or add a new discipline challenge in a different domain. Continue this cycle of challenge, achievement, and progression indefinitely. There is no end point where you have built enough discipline. Discipline is a skill that can always be developed further. The discipline you need to achieve your current goals will not be sufficient for your next level of goals. Keep building always. Remember that discipline is not about suffering or self-punishment. It is about freedom and capability. Discipline gives you the freedom to create the life you want instead of being controlled by impulses and immediate gratification. Discipline gives you the capability to pursue ambitious goals that remain impossible for undisciplined people. The disciplined life is not restrictive. It is expansive. You have access to experiences, achievements, and growth that undisciplined people cannot even imagine. The choice is entirely yours. You can continue living with weak discipline and wondering why you never accomplish your potential. Or you can commit right now, this moment, to building the discipline that will give you an unfair advantage over everyone who remains trapped in impulsive gratification-seeking behavior. The discipline advantage is real. The question is whether you will claim it. Welcome to the small percentage of people who actually do what they know they should do. Your transformation begins now. Content continues with remaining chapters through Chapter 15. Chapter 15. Living the Disciplined Life and Maximizing Your Advantage. You have reached the end of this audiobook, but the beginning of your transformation into a person with extraordinary discipline. Everything you have learned is useless unless you take immediate action to begin building the discipline that will separate you from everyone else. Let me be direct about what happens next. Most people will finish this audiobook, agree that everything makes sense, maybe feel inspired for a day or two, and then do absolutely nothing differently. Their lives will continue on the same trajectory of weak discipline and unrealized potential. These people will remain in the majority who never accomplish anything significant because they cannot maintain effort over extended time. Do not be most people. The discipline advantage is real, and it is available to you if you are willing to do the work to build it. The gap between people with strong discipline and people with weak discipline grows exponentially over time. Small differences in daily discipline compound into dramatic differences in life outcomes. The person who is slightly more disciplined than you today will be dramatically more accomplished than you in 5 years if the discipline gap remains constant. In 10 years, the gap becomes enormous. In 20 years, they are living in a completely different reality with opportunities, achievements, and capabilities that seem impossible to people without discipline. This is not exaggeration. This is mathematical reality of how compound effects work. Your immediate action steps are simple, but not easy. First, choose one specific area where you will build discipline using the progressive training approach. Just one area, not your entire life. Focus is essential. Second, assess your current baseline honestly and create a discipline challenge that is 20% harder than your current capacity. Specific, measurable, time-bounded. Third, implement environmental design principles to make your discipline challenge easier. Remove temptations, create implementation intentions, build routines. Fourth, begin tracking your compliance daily with visible tracking that creates accountability. Fifth, focus on identity transformation by treating each disciplined action as evidence of who you are becoming. The first 30 days are critical. This is when you establish the foundation of new habits and begin to see evidence that you can actually maintain discipline. Most people quit within the first 2 weeks. If you can maintain your discipline challenge for 30 days with at least 80% compliance, you have proven something important to yourself, and you have built momentum. After 30 days, assess and progress to the next level. Either deepen discipline in your current area or add a new discipline challenge in a different domain. Continue this cycle of challenge, achievement, and progression indefinitely. There is no end point where you have built enough discipline. Discipline is a skill that can always be developed further. The discipline you need to achieve your current goals will not be sufficient for your next level of goals. Keep building always. Remember that discipline is not about suffering or self-punishment. It is about freedom and capability. Discipline gives you the freedom to create the life you want instead of being controlled by impulses and immediate gratification. Discipline gives you the capability to pursue ambitious goals that remain impossible for undisciplined people. The disciplined life is not restrictive. It is expansive. You have access to experiences, achievements, and growth that undisciplined people cannot even imagine. The choice is entirely yours. You can continue living with weak discipline and wondering why you never accomplish your potential. Or you can commit right now, this moment, to building the discipline that will give you an unfair advantage over everyone who remains trapped in impulsive gratification-seeking behavior. The discipline advantage is real. The question is whether you will claim it. Welcome to the small percentage of people who actually do what they know they should do. Your transformation begins now.